Imagine you spend years of your life and millions of dollars to build the ultimate speed machine. You hire the best engineers, you find the bravest driver, and you finally hit the track. You don't just win, you absolutely embarrass the competition. You're so fast that the other teams aren't even in your rearview mirror anymore. They're basically in another zip code. You're celebrating, popping the champagne, thinking you've changed the world. And then, a guy in a suit walks up to you and says, "Yeah, about that. You're banned. Permanently." Sounds like a movie, right? But in the world of automotive history, it's happened more often than you'd think. Today, we're looking at the monsters, the cars that were so fast, so powerful, or so technologically advanced that the people in charge literally had to rewrite the rulebooks just to make them go away. We're talking about a rally era that became too deadly to exist, a Japanese legend that was so dominant it was nicknamed after a movie monster, and a British supercar so terrifying that the CEO or the company took one home for a weekend and decided, nope, nobody should be allowed to buy this. Stick around, because the #1 car on our list didn't just break the rules, it used a literal jet engine component to cheat physics. Let's get into it. If we're talking about too powerful, we have to start with the most legendary era in racing history. Group B Rally. In the early 1980s, the FIA decided to loosen the rules for rally racing. They basically told manufacturers, as long as you build 200 road-legal versions of the car, you can do whatever you want. This was a mistake, a glorious, beautiful, terrifying mistake. Within a few years, we had cars like the Audi Sport Quattro S1 and the Lancia Delta S4. These weren't just cars, they were carbon fiber boxes strapped to 500 or 600 horsepower engines, screaming through narrow dirt paths lined with thousands of fans. They were doing 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds, on gravel. The power was so insane that the drivers started to admit they couldn't keep up with the machines. Legendary driver Walter Röhrl once said that in Group B, you weren't thinking about the next turn, you were thinking about the turn after that, because the car was already there. But the ban didn't happen because they were winning too much. It happened because the human body and the tracks couldn't handle the speed. In 1986, at the Tour de Corse, Henri Toivonen and his co-driver flew off a cliff in their Lancia. The car exploded, and because the chassis was made of magnesium and the fuel tank was unprotected, there was nothing left but a metal frame. The FIA realized they'd created monsters that were simply too powerful for the real world. They banned Group B entirely for the 1987 season. Just like that, the golden era was dead, replaced by the much slower, more sensible Group A. Now, let's go from the dirt of Europe to the racetracks of North America. Meet the Chaparral 2J. If you look at this car, it looks like a giant white box on wheels. It's not pretty, it doesn't look fast, but in 1970, it was the scariest thing on 4 wheels. Why? Because it had 2 17-inch fans in the back powered by a separate snowmobile engine. Yes, you heard that right. It had a dedicated engine just to run the fans. The fans sucked all the air from underneath the car and blew it out the back. This created a vacuum that literally stuck the car to the ground. This is called ground effect, and while every modern race car uses it today, the 2J was the first to do it with brute force. While other cars had to slow down for corners to keep from sliding, the 2J could take them at full throttle because the vacuum was holding it down with over 1,000 pounds of force, even when it was standing still. It was qualifying 2 seconds faster than anyone else. The competition was furious. They complained that the fans were throwing rocks at them, which was true, but the real reason they hated it was that they couldn't beat it. The governing body eventually banned movable aerodynamic devices, which was just a fancy way of saying, "Your vacuum cleaner's too good, Jim. Go home." You've probably heard of the Nissan Skyline. It's the darling of the tuning world. But did you know it was so dominant in racing that it actually killed an entire racing category? In the early 90s, the R32 GTR entered the Australian Touring Car Championship. At the time, the series was dominated by big, heavy Ford and Holden V8s. Then, this high-tech Japanese coupe showed up with a twin-turbo straight-six and a genius all-wheel drive system. It didn't just win, it humiliated the locals. It won the Bathurst 1000 back-to-back in 91 and 92. The Australian fans were so mad, they actually booed the drivers on the podium. The local press started calling it Godzilla, the monster from Japan that came to destroy their V8s. The officials couldn't figure out how to stop it. They tried adding weight penalties, the Skyline still won. They tried restricting the turbos, the Skyline still won. Finally, in 1993, they just changed the rules entirely. They banned turbocharging and all-wheel drive, effectively making the GTR illegal. They went back to a V8-only format just to make sure Nissan couldn't play anymore. When you're so good they have to ban your entire engine type just to give someone else a chance? That's legendary. Now let's talk about a car you can actually buy. Well, if you have enough money. The Dodge Challenger SRT Demon. When Dodge released this car in 2018, they bragged about one thing above all else. It was banned by the NHRA. It was a genius marketing move, but it was also technically true. The NHRA, National Hot Rod Association, has a rule. Any car that runs a quarter mile faster than 9.99 seconds or goes over 135 miles per hour must have a roll cage and a bunch of other safety gear. The Demon, straight from the factory, ran a 9.65 second quarter mile. Because Dodge sold it as a street car without a roll cage, the NHRA sent them a letter saying the car was too fast to compete in its stock form. Think about that for a second. A major car manufacturer built a car that was legally too fast for the professional drag strips it was designed for. Dodge didn't see this as a problem. They saw it as a badge of honor. They even included the banned letter in the press kit. It's the ultimate flex for a muscle car. We built this so powerful that the refs won't let us play. In Formula One, the rules are everything. And Colin Chapman, the founder of Lotus, was the king of finding the gaps in those rules. In 1981, F1 banned sliding skirts, those rubber bits on the side of the car that helped create downforce. Everyone else was struggling to find grip, but Chapman showed up with the Lotus 88. This car had two chassis. One was a stiff aerodynamic outer shell that handled all the wind pressure and downforce. The other was the inner chassis that held the driver and the engine, which had its own soft suspension for comfort and control. By separating the two, Lotus managed to create massive downforce without the car bouncing all over the place. The other teams looked at it and realized they were about to get smoked. They protested immediately. The FIA banned it before it could even finish a single race. They claimed the outer chassis was a movable aerodynamic device. Chapman was heartbroken. He felt that innovation was being punished, and honestly, he was right. The car was a masterpiece of engineering that was simply too clever for the status quo. This next one is my personal favorite because the ban didn't come from a racing board or a government. It came from the guy who built it. TVR was a British company known for building cars that were basically engines with some fiberglass wrapped around them. No ABS, no traction control, just pure, unfiltered chaos. In the late 90s, they decided to build a GT1 race car called the Speed 12. They took two of their six-cylinder engines and fused them together to make a 7.7-liter V12. When they put it on the dyno, the machine that measures horsepower, the engine was so powerful it literally broke the dyno's input shaft. They estimated it was making over 800 or maybe even 1,000 horsepower in a car that weighed about the same as a Mazda Miata. They planned to make a road-going version. They took deposits. But one night, the CEO of TVR, Peter Wheeler, took one of the prototypes home. He drove it for a few miles, came back, and canceled the entire project. He said the car was simply too powerful. He realized that if he sold this to the public, people were going to end up in trees within 5 minutes. He returned everyone's deposits and ordered the prototypes to be dismantled. Only one road-legal version was ever officially sanctioned to be rebuilt later. When the guy who makes widow leakers for a living says a car is too scary to sell, you know it's a different breed. Finally, we have to talk about the wing. You know the one, the massive 3-foot-tall wing on the back of the Dodge Daytona and the Plymouth Superbird. In 1969 and 1970, NASCAR was all about aerodynamics. Dodge and Plymouth realized that if they smoothed out the front of the car and added a giant wing to the back, they could hit speeds that were unheard of. The Dodge Daytona became the first car in NASCAR history to break the 200-mile-per-hour barrier. The problem? The tires of 1970 couldn't handle 200 miles per hour. The tracks couldn't handle it. The other drivers were terrified. NASCAR officials looked at these aero warriors and decided they were just too fast for the era. For the 1971 season, they slapped a huge engine restriction on any car with special aerodynamic features. It made the cars uncompetitive, effectively banning the wings and the pointy noses forever. They went back to stock-looking cars, and it took decades for NASCAR to hit those speeds safely again.